Welcome to the KOMO Sports End Zone podcast with KOMO Sports Director Niko Tamurian and Najee Moye.
Well, how's it going? And welcome to the KOMO Sports End Zone podcast. I'm KOMO Sports Director Niko Tamurian, along with my guy, my co-host, a great man. Like, there's not enough accolades. It's, the holiday season is just like,
oh my gosh.
I'm just trying to think of a ton of compliments I can give Najee. He's just the man. That's the best way to say it. He's the man. Najee Moye, how you doing?
Niko, I'm great. And let me tell you, you are so complimentary. I mean, just like, let me tell you guys, Niko is the hardest working man in the city.
Oh, you're too kind.
Literally the hardest working man. Is Santa Claus 1, Niko Tamurian number 2. Believe me. And Santa's going to have a lot of wish lists coming from the city of Seattle.
What is going on with our pro sports right now?
Yeah, I think my wish list is just like, can we just be better? I think be better overall at a couple sports teams, specifically the Hawks, which we'll get to, but definitely the Mariners. I know the season's far from starting, but I know a lot of people are already talking themselves out of this upcoming baseball season for the Mariners. Why is that, Niko?
Well, and you look at the prior, say, 12 months of Seattle sports where you had the Mariners, Seahawks, and Kraken all make the playoffs, and at least in some respects, they're all dramatic, right?
Yeah.
The Mariners ending the drought, the Seahawks getting in like at the very last second of the season,
sure, and
the Kraken making history with their first ever bid. And then you follow that up with what we've seen so far this fall, where the Seahawks are, reeling at 6-7, maybe 6-8 if they lose to Philly. More on that soon. The Kraken, just snapped an 8-game skid, but that was a long 8-game losing streak. That's never a positive, right? And then you have the Mariners. And to answer your question about that, they may be cooking something still.
Oh.
The problem becomes when you shed salary after salary, you make like 3 salary cutting moves, trading Jared Kelenic, Marco Gonzalez, Eugenio Suarez, and then you're not really, at least to public knowledge, in on the big fish that were out there, Shohei Ohtani and Juan Soto. When Soto, even if he was a rental for 1 year, the Mariners, that was a trade. They could have done that. They had enough firepower. In fact, they had way more assets to offer. Now, whether they were willing to part with those assets is another story. But what the Yankees got Juan Soto for, good players, of course, the Mariners had that and then some in their farm system and in major league talent. And so for M's fans, yes, a move may still be coming. However, there's a track record over the years, not just in, these last couple of years, not even necessarily in the Dipoto Hollander service era. There's just a reputation that they don't make those big splashes, especially in free agency. And when you dump those salaries and there's not an immediate haul that's kind of commensurate with what those guys were that you got rid of, that's going to anger fans. It's one thing. It's like, if I give you $100, Najee,
I would appreciate it very much.
I mean, and like, you're just like, we'll see what's going to happen. And then you're telling me you're going to do the best with the hand that you've been dealt, like Scott Service said at the winter meetings. And you're saying lines like that. I'm not really feeling too good about that $100 I gave, even though I know in real life you're good for it. Right?
No.
You see what the analogy I'm trying to make here, right?
Niko would, by that analogy, the $100 that
it might be lost.
It'll just be somewhere. It won't be anywhere. I believe every team has a window for playoffs, for championships, for everything. The Mariners ended a decades-long playoff drought. Playoff drought is enough to drink, personally, honestly. And with a great playoff run, and it's like the ownership and all the powers that be were just like, what, we want less of this. We want less of this, because cutting those 3 guys was a big deal. But the thing is, and I want to make a comparison that is maybe a little bit of a stretch. How do you feel about this? Julio Rodriguez was signed to a massive contract a couple years ago. He's obviously was going to be the face of the Mariners, going forward for probably the next, I don't know, how long was that contract?
It could be up to 17 years, but it starts at 7.
Yeah, it starts at 7 years. It's a long contract, And then you start building a team. You add guys like Luis Castillo, Robbie Ray. Teoscar Hernandez came last year, great addition, I would say. I mean, after playing him in Toronto, you want to see him hit in the Mariners uniform. You got to see him hit in the Mariners uniform. He hit a bunch of home runs. He also struck out.
Yeah.
Understandable. We get it. However, you want to build around Julio, obviously, because Julio's a centerpiece. We see that in the home run derby. We see that when he sells jerseys, and we see that everywhere. Are we coming up on maybe what could be the beginning of a comparison of Julio Rodriguez to Mike Trout?
I think he's capable of doing the same things, no question about it. I think he took a leap forward in year 2, and I think there's no reason to suspect he won't take a leap forward in year 3.
But
and Najee, go ahead.
But the Mike Trout argument would be Mike Trout has been playing for the Angels for how long?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
He has not won one playoff game. Now Julio's won playoff games, but I mean, that being said, the Angels had Ohtani and Trout for several years, and nothing happened because they didn't build around them. I don't know if that's a budget thing. I don't know what's going on with the Angels. I don't know. There's a million things going on there, but I'm almost concerned that may be kind of the same sort of deal. I mean,
I just think Phil Nevin was a terrible manager, if you're asking me.
Well,
like picking that fight with the Mariners last year, that was such amateur hour. But
yeah, but you see what I'm saying about the Trout comparison from Julio. I mean, you have this guy who's a generational talent that they spotted and want to protect, want to make sure he didn't go to teams like the Giants or the Dodgers or the Yankees. And you're protecting this guy, but I mean, baseball is not basketball. You can't win, and actually, and even basketball, you can't do this. In no other sport, you can't do this. You need a legit 9 guys who can hit properly, and the Mariners have half of that right now.
Yeah, and I would say to piggyback off what you said about Julio, another reason why this offseason and quite frankly last year's offseason were so disappointing and bewildering is that you spent money. Yeah. You signed Robbie Ray to a $115 million contract. Mm-hmm. You locked up the generational franchise face in Julio Rodriguez. And yet you followed that up with right? And so
I like the Teoscar move.
Yeah, no, I think I think my camera's like zooming in on me. You guys see that?
Oh God.
Move this.
Niko's gone. Niko is now. We're now doing a close up on Niko.
I don't understand. These cameras hate me.
He is the star of the show.
I think we're okay right now. I don't know about that, but I think we're okay right now. Just a little zoom in. We're not seeing my Sonics logo, which was the whole reason of wearing this jacket. For our folks that are watching.
Yes. Well, you just want to get. This is a very important take that Niko has.
These cameras are so freaking weird, though. They just zoom in randomly on me. Anyway,
it's okay.
But yes, you signed Luis Castillo longer. Here's I guess what I'm trying to say. Preseason and then into the season of 2022, when you ended the drought. Preseason, you signed Robbie Ray to that massive $115 million contract. You made the trade for Luis Castillo and then extended him during the season within weeks. You locked up Julio Rodriguez for at least 10 years, maybe 17. You did all these moves that screamed, this is our window, we're going to win a title. And then it was followed up with, AJ Pollock, Tommy La Stella, Teoscar, on paper was a good trade. It just didn't pan out. So I'm not going to knock them for that. But free agency wise, the 1 year, $7 million deal to AJ Pollock was like the biggest they'd given a free agent bat in years, which is inexcusable. And now you follow up all of that with missing out the playoffs. Even if it was just one game, you're still there. And then you follow that up with salary dumping, which is more like you'd see a rebuilding team too, not a team, that's got a World Series caliber rotation and a superstar locked up in Julio. They just haven't. It's bewildering. And I'll again preface it that maybe some move is on the horizon, and we'll talk specifics about trade in a couple seconds here. But in this moment where I haven't gotten the return on the money I gave you, when I say I gave you the money, it's those fans that spent hundreds, if not thousands, on Mariners gear and tickets and parking and what have you.
Parking.
Yeah. And they're looking at this and saying, well, I paid all this for a contender because they had a contender.
This is what my $12 beer is paying for, after all, right?
Well, I mean, I didn't think the $12 beer was going to be the difference in Ohtani or not, but you certainly, it's bewildering, and I'm holding out hope something's coming. Well, but it's hard. It's hard to do that based on faith when there's not the track record.
So let me ask you this, Niko, because you mentioned a Seattle native, Blake Snell, in the last episode.
Yeah.
And we'll get to kind of more on what we think the Mariners will do and what they won't do. I mean, you're expecting something. Is it something you're expecting just a Blake Snell signing? Because honestly, if the Mariners sign another pitcher, there are going to be throws. A lot of fans that are going to be just like, guys. And we've been saying the same thing about the Mariners for the past 2 off seasons. I mean, at least I have, just like, we need bats, and they've actually subtracted from the bats they have. And I just think, I don't know. I mean, I asked you a question. Yeah. What was your response?
Well, I think Blake Snell is in a little bit of a different boat because he's a Cy Young winner twice.
Right.
and he's a Seattle kid. And so fans want to see him come home. I think the other part of that equation, like we talked about last week, is if you sign Blake Snell, it lessens the blow of trading, say, a Brian Wu or Emerson Hancock.
Sure.
It would have hurt even less if you still had Marco.
Yeah.
Marco is just an innings eater and a clubhouse guy. It really hurts when you lose him. But if you sign Blake Snell, not only is it giving you, I think, hands down the best rotation in baseball, and maybe that's where they're doubling down on, knowing that T-Mobile Park is hard to hit with the marine layer and all that sort of thing. So I think signing Blake is one of two things. It's doubling down on making T-Mobile Park the hardest place for opponents to score runs, or it frees up the personnel and prospects to potentially trade, say, a Brian Wu, say to the Rays or say to the Royals for MJ Menendez, which is a rumor I saw out there, which I think he'd be a good, I think he would solve the DH problem for sure. And him and Cal could kind of trade off that sort of thing.
I think solving the DH problem is a big deal. Like I said before, Tommy Listella ends up being the DH. I mean, you want your DH to be a hefty guy. What do you imagine as a DH? Like I think back to guys like Jim Thome.
Yeah, sure.
Adam Dunn.
And the problem is, you expect Adam Dunn, those guys from years ago, you expect somebody, Tommy LaStella, and I don't mean to offend the guy.
We don't know. We don't.
You
we
don't.
Tommy.
That's not screaming DH to me.
No.
And that was a sign of trouble. Even on opening day, when there was all sorts of goodwill, fans were kind of like, really?
Yeah, really. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm hoping that the Mariners don't end up in a situation where the happiest fans will be at T-Mobile Park, will be watching Def Leppard and watching Journey and watching Green Day and
Pre-sale.
and then all the bands come into T-Mobile Park. I'm not going to go to those concerts. I might go to Def Leppard, to be honest. Actually, I might go to Green Day.
I'd go to Def Leppard.
I'd go to any of those concerts, honestly. But I don't know if and I'd want to go to a Mariners game. And that's one thing I've heard from Mariners fans. The offseason just kind of getting underway. Well, not getting underway, but really, really getting underway. Is that some Mariners fans are just kind of like, they're seeing what's happening. They're seeing what's, the moves that are going on. They're just like, do I even want to show to the ballpark? Like, is that even... What are we going to see? I said last week, the Mariners may lose, 3 out of 5 games 1-0. That's probably a very strong possibility. Unfortunately, I look at, what the holes are in the lineup, and not that, well, you lost Suarez, so you need a third baseman, Matt Chapman, but for the money that the Mariners have available, I mean, can they really even sign someone for the $100 that Niko's going to give me? The equivalent.
That's going to be like the new podcast thing there. That's what's kind of maddening about it, is that I was making this point to a couple folks the other day, and even on social media a bit. The Arizona Diamondbacks won 84 games this past season in the regular season, which was 4 games fewer than the Mariners, not just last year, but in the playoff year as well for the M's. Yet they made it out of the World Series, and they recognize that you build on these things. You don't cruise or coast and say, oh, we're suddenly a playoff team. Well, no, you have to improve. You have to add pieces. And they traded for Suarez. They've made several other bigger moves too. And that's what you do when you make the playoffs.
Yeah.
You don't say, oh, this is a playoff team, we're going to just, no, like you may, especially if you didn't win the World Series. Like if you win the World Series, fine. But the Mariners, they won the wild card, then got swept by Houston in the ALDS in 2022. We all know that.
We were there.
And we were. And so your response to that needs to be, okay, how can I make sure I get to the ALCS next year or the World Series next year or win the ALDS at the minimum? And the response to that was, Tommy LaStella. It was AJ Pollock. I think on paper, the Teoscar trade was a good trade.
I like the trade still.
Yeah, it just didn't really work out the way we all thought it would. But it would be my chair got stuck.
What is going on with Niko?
I'm trying to slide forward. My camera hates me. My chair hates me. The Mariners are making me patience.
Yeah, maybe being hated by your own fans. I just don't know, because these fans they've been through so much.
They have,
and just moving here a couple years ago and just kind of seeing the passion that the Mariners fans have when they're trying to make the playoffs here before they actually made the playoffs. When they actually made the playoffs, just the happiness of just what they'll look like, even that long 18-inning game that actually and that playoff that was also a 0-0 game. There's a lot of zeros, man.
Well, the pitching is still electric, even if we're losing Marco.
Honestly,
then you sign somebody like Snell, if that happens, then it's just nobody can touch it.
The pitching rotation is so good and they're so deep. I really just think that I wouldn't even be surprised. If this is Najee's team, and I mean, you got to make some big splashes. I'm thinking Kirby.
Like trading Kirby, or
I think even
that'd
either
be a tough sell.
It'd be a tough sell, but imagine we could get for a package with Kirby and some prospects.
I think that.
I mean,
if they were
I hate to do it, but I mean, like, we look at the lineup and we see the issues. The issues have been there for years, you know.
I think that I think Kirby and Castillo are untouchable.
Gilbert.
Logan would be the next closest one. I think he's more tradable, but I would still hate to see it. I think he's phenomenal.
Well, you can't keep that
I
going.
think the only as an observer of this team, the only starters I'd be, and I don't even know that comfort's the right word, but I'd be okay with, depending on the haul, is the Brian Wu, Emerson Hancock, Bryce Miller, trio of young stars in that order and comfort level, like Wu and Hancock. Okay.
But you got to be in it to win it, Niko. That's the thing. I mean, sometimes you do have to sub pitching for hitting if you don't have any hitting. And there's not a lot of hitting available in the free agent class. I mean,
it's true.
You talk about the Yankees. You mentioned the Yankees signing, trading for Soto. I mean, the Yankees gave up their best bullpen pitcher in Michael King and a bunch of prospects, and that trade was more of a, the Yankees have this need, the Padres have this need, and I think the Mariners and the Yankees had the same need. They just needed a bat. The Yankees just kind of jumped on it. I don't know. Is it time to play for fair or foul, Niko?
Yeah, let's do our fair or foul. Yeah, and it's just, why don't you?
We're gonna swing the bat on.
I've got a specific point I want to make here, so I'm gonna have you read it to the audience really quick.
The audience. Okay, so the first fair or foul, we have a couple of these. We're gonna swing it for the fences here, you guys. The Mariners will make a move that will win fans over.
And that's the tricky part of it. Wins fans over. You're talking about a fan base that had legitimate hopes of Shohei Ohtani or Juan Soto. And the question becomes, does Brian Wu and prospects for Randy Arozarena or Isaac Paredes move the needle, win fans over? Does Emerson Hancock for, again, I saw this from a few folks on social media, MJ Menendez to play your DH, does that win people over? I think if it's last offseason, sure.
Yeah.
I think in this point, you're saying you had fans expecting them to go all in, and you expected the response of the really difficult missing the postseason by one game, and then the press conference that followed that fans did not like. You expected the response to be, let's go and show them that we're committed. And maybe they will do that. And that's, I suppose, the question to this, but I guess the reasoning going down this road again is that the goalposts has moved.
Yeah.
The fences have changed. I don't know where I'm going with that one.
The fences have changed. It's a big field now.
It's a big field.
You're not second and two trying to convert a first down. You're not that close anymore. You were further away, and
you had a first and goal at the 3-yard line. Now it's third and goal at the 15. You got to make something happen.
They are not close to the 15-yard line. I don't think the Mariners are even that close. So fair or foul? So the question is, do you think they'll make a move?
Yeah,
to
I
win
kind of avoided the question.
Yeah. Well, because he wanted me to answer the question first. That's why.
No, I think I'm not going to go into an explainer because I want you to answer it as well. I'm going to say fair, not based on faith or belief without evidence, but simply based on, I still have hope that a professional baseball organization that went to the postseason and just missed by one game will do something drastic. Definition of drastic, maybe changing from 2 weeks ago to now, that they will do something. So that's why I'm saying fair. If you're asking my confidence level on that, it's I don't know. It's pretty low.
Oh man.
But I'm giving benefit of the doubt based on, like, you have to. There's no alternative.
You really do have to. And Nico's fair or foul, that ball's hitting the goal, the post right there.
Yeah, it's hitting the foul pole.
It's hitting the foul pole right now. Here's the thing, guys. It would be egregious if the Mariners don't make a move to even try to win the fans over before the season. Now, I guess maybe we can amend the question a bit. I'm not sure if possible.
It's our show.
If before the season starts, I believe if the Mariners see that, if they're confident that they can, go into the season with the lineup that they have, whoever it may look like, they will continue doing that. I don't see anything happening for the offseason, the Mariners, Snell or otherwise, truthfully.
Really? Okay.
No. Because I just don't feel like the money's there. I just don't see it. I mean, last year's price is not today's price. Is one of my favorite phrases to use. I the amended version to that question would be like, I think they'll do something by the trade deadline? Well, if the Mariners are in contention with whatever lineup they're trotting out there, if they're in contention, it'll be based on Julio and Cal and Ty and the amazing rotation they've got. It won't be because of the hitting, believe me. But if they are in contention, if they're close, I do believe they'll make a move to kind of get over the hump. I mentioned a bunch of pitchers at the beginning, and I love the Kansas City idea you brought up before. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, I wasn't either, and so that's what gives me some confidence that there could be something that we're not envisioning.
I just don't know if it'll come in the offseason. I don't think it'll come in as like a regular signing. I think it'd have to come as a trade, and I think the trade that would have to be is moving a pitcher or two, because let's face it, I mean, no baseball team can go 5 deep as a rotation. I mean, I think the Yankees can. Because I'm a fan and I'm delusional. That's obvious. But I think the Mariners can do that. I mean, there's like 6 starting pitchers that can be number 2 or 3 starters on any team in baseball, and the Mariners may have to use that leverage to get a 5-hitter, a 4-hitter. Someone who can go after Julio or before France or after France. We may have to sign this country of France to hit for the Mariners this year. I mean, I don't know, but I'm going to go with foul. Is the correct answer. I'm pulling the ball. I just don't have really. The ownership has the way that Service and Dipoto have been kind of like the hand that's been dealt to me. Don't want to talk about the budget. That just means that the decision is not above them. Their hands are tied for whatever reason. It could be the Root Sports reason, as you mentioned last week. I just don't see it happening. Why should Mariners fans be excited for this season? It's because it's a trip to the ballpark, I guess.
Yeah, and Ryan Divish of the Seattle Times wrote kind of an op-ed piece, and I thought he nailed it. That this notion and this narrative has gone on not just this offseason, but it's hit a fever pitch this weekend. The ownership group has to just come out and say what's happening. They can't keep trying to lie to the fans. I'm not saying they are lying, but like come out like everything's hunky dory, and then it's like, and it's not.
It's not hunky dory.
And like
it's not even
just
hunky.
Explain it. Maybe things are better than you. Here's the thing: when you don't speak, the void gets filled with rumor and stuff that may not be true. Maybe it is true. I don't know. But that's the idea. I don't know, because the ownership hasn't said anything. And the ownership can come out and say, you know what? Like, this is a 1-year thing we have to cut back till we figure out what's going on with our TV stuff. Or they could say, no, none of that's true. Guess what? We're about to make a big move. Bam. We just couldn't afford $700 million. Although Shohei took such a deal. Like,
who can?
Deferring.
Well, exactly. Yeah, with that deal. But who saw that deferring deal? I wish we could all defer $680 million in 10 years from now, without interest, by the way. So
yeah, well, that's smart, because then he'll, assuming in 10 years he doesn't live in California, then he doesn't get hit with state income tax, and he can make more money on his deal than he will right now when he lives with and works with the Dodgers.
Very smart.
That's just my take on it.
With a couple rings on it, maybe,
probably, right?
And the thing is, I mean, think about Seattle. If you even add Ohtani to that lineup, I mean, are they even making the playoffs?
Yeah,
as a hitter, because he's not pitching this.
He's your everyday DH, and yeah, I think it'd make a world difference putting him and Julio in the lineup like that, and then JP, if he plays like he did last year. I mean,
Cal,
yeah, you're basically in the order there. Your first 5 batters,
JP,
Cal,
Julio,
Shohei, Ty France in there somewhere.
Yeah, that's half the lineup though. That's just above half the lineup.
Yeah, and then you figure out but
a dead zone. I guess.
I'm just so sad that's not happening.
I understand. Well, I think it won't happen in the offseason. Mariners fans
I think there's something coming this offseason.
But
to answer the fair foul question, does it move the needle? I'd like to think it does, but I can't promise you that, because the confidence isn't there. But I have confidence in pro sports that they have to.
Yeah,
because they're so close.
Yeah. Well, you hit the nail on the head. You want the ownership group to just kind of tell the fans what's going on. I mean, it's a bit of transparency that I think a lot of people are kind of seeing more and more of in professional sports. I speak as a Yankee fan a lot because I am one, first of all, and number two, I mean the ownership group. I mean, and people I know, believe me, the Yankees are not loved in this region. Believe me. But I always hear from the ownership group how Steinbrenner's like, we're working. Okay, we want to field a winner. We want to field a winner. And I'm not sure if we've even heard half of that from the Mariners ownership group.
Nothing at all, really.
Nothing at all.
Good, bad, or indifferent. There's nothing. That's the when stuff like this happens. That again, that faith that you're going to spend my $100 and then give it back, give me the investment back, whatever. You have no clue because nobody's saying anything.
Exactly.
And you have Jerry and Scott and Justin doing the best they can. I think they're doing the best they can, honestly. But they're hinting at that they're limited, and Jerry's done this before last offseason, saying like there was restrictions and things like that. And so, yeah, something's got to give here.
Something's got to give. If I can quote one of my favorite Seinfeld characters, Uncle Leo. Okay. Jerry, hello. I mean, what's going on? What's going on? I just don't know. I wish I could tell the Mariners fans that there are better things for them to look out for. Seattle sports fans as a whole, actually.
Yeah.
There are better things for them to look out for this holiday season. On switching gears to the Seahawks, sadly, Hawks/Mariners fans, you have to play the Eagles on Monday Night Football. But good thing for us, it's on KOMO News on Monday night. The game that was actually flexed to Monday night, which is a rare thing.
It is,
it's
yeah,
super rare thing.
And that was before the Seahawks hit a 4-game losing streak, the longest of the Carroll era.
Yeah,
I made this point off the top, Naj, about how, gosh, what a rough patch in Seattle sports outside of the Huskies. I'll call it the pro sports. Huskies have been everything they touch turns to gold right now,
gold and purple.
And hey, by the way, for our loyal listeners/viewers, I would just like to point out I started last week's show with a shout out to Mike Hopkins and the men's basketball team. Lo and behold, like 2 days later, they beat number 7 Gonzaga.
You should shout out the Mariners.
I'm telling you, that's a good team. You, he's got a tournament team there, and I think they're going to do really well in Pac-12 play. Just don't stub your toe in non-conference and make this happen. And I think Hop, gets to stay for a lot longer, and this team goes to the tournament. And Hop has a new formula, new offense, new defense, and new attacking formula in the transfer portal. But we can talk more about that in the new year when Pac-12 play starts. But just know that I said it last week, first week of December. I thought they were good, and they have, unlike the baseball free agency, given us that proof by beating Gonzaga. But outside the college sports, my point was there, Naj, that like Seahawks 4-game lose. Before the Kraken won their game the other night against Florida, did you know that the Kraken and Seahawks were on a combined 12-game losing streak?
I don't mean to laugh because I had not heard that before.
And then the Mariners on top of it with everything we just talked about for the last 20 some odd minutes.
So you're saying that Seattle sports fans should lean on the Huskies 100%.
Well, but that's the thing.
You got to wait till January.
Not everybody's a Coug on this side, not everybody's a Husky on this side of the mountain. There are a lot of Cougs as well.
That's true.
It's not like it's not like the Mariners or the Seahawks or the Kraken where maybe a little bit less for the Kraken because they're new and there's still like some Canucks fans and whatnot.
Right.
But like if you're talking about Mariners and Seahawks, I'd say 90% of NFL and MLB fans in Seattle, probably higher than that, are Mariners and Seahawks fans. Obviously, it's a hometown team.
Sure.
Whereas the Huskies, it's probably something like 65-35 over the Cougs, right?
Yeah.
But so, and for those pro sports teams, you have all these losses and what's going on with Pete and the Hawks? What's going on with the Mariners offseason? What's going on with this Kraken losing streak on the heels of that playoff? It's a rough stretch.
It's rough.
And
the vibes are not great.
And then you have the Seahawks going against the Eagles, arguably one of the best teams in the NFL. A little bit of a rough patch in their own, but I think any team is going to run into that, and I still think they're a Super Bowl contender. And
I agree.
If you don't win that game, you're 6-8. And you know what? By the way, shout out to Super Intern Mary. It's our final podcast because the semester's ending.
Shout out to Mary.
She's controlling like everything you see on the screen.
Not the cameras, by the way.
And she's pretty awesome. Yeah, she didn't control my camera.
No, the camera has a mind of its own.
No, we may give it to her as a parting gift since it's not really working.
We appreciate Mary for her hard
work. With Mary going places in the world, and welcome back anytime on the show. We appreciate Mary. But if you could bring up our next fair or foul on this one, we're talking about the Seahawks. If they lose to the Eagles, they're 6-8. And in my opinion, you'd have to almost like win out to go to the playoffs. So fair or foul, Najee, the Seahawks will make the NFL playoffs this year.
I'm waffling like an iron. I'm waffling, honestly. I really here's the thing. The Hawks, they're gonna lose to the Eagles on Monday night. I think we're all kind of mentally preparing for that. Not just because the Eagles are a much better team. It's because the Eagles are also fighting for something. They also had a bit of a slide, and they are currently tied with the Cowboys for the win to the top of the NFC East, which means they are coming for blood because they are tired of losing. They just lost to the Cowboys the week before, and honestly, I don't even think the Cowboys are that much better than the Eagles. I think they're kind of neck and neck. The week prior, we saw the Eagles play the Niners, and the Eagles got ran off the field. The Eagles are coming for blood, and it's not going to be a great thing. It's not going to be easy. You got Geno Smith that's injured. The Hawks are. I mean, anything could happen, but I just don't see it happening. Now the question in question was about the playoffs.
Yeah.
And as I come around to that, I think to myself, and I'm still waffling at this moment in time, I think the Rams are the biggest kind of like hindrance to that.
Yeah,
because
they have a tiebreaker and all
yeah,
that.
because the Hawks are going to run into a position that they put themselves in. Or actually, I shouldn't say that. Well, the Hawks did put themselves in with this long losing streak by losing to the Rams twice and losing that tiebreaker to the Rams. I mean, the Rams are right there with them in the hunt. They're trying to make the playoffs as well. And that's a really well coached team with a great defense that still has Aaron Donald, still has Matt Stafford. I mean, that's a quality team. You can't, and and now the last 3 games of the year, when we look at the Hawks, we talked about it ad nauseum. These are the 3 games that we think the Hawks could maybe kind of just snag. You don't know what you're going to get at the end of the year for the Cardinals. They're not really playing for much per draft position. The Steelers trying to make the playoffs as well. The Titans just beat the Dolphins in a crazy Monday night game. That game is no longer an easy W either for the Seahawks. I don't see it. It's unfortunate. I want to bring up kind of what you said about making the playoffs and getting better. I remember being at watching the Hawks play the 49ers in that wild card game last year, and they did make some defensive pieces. They added Julian Love, they added Leonard Williams, and the thing is, it's still the Niners. Just being good.
Niners went and got Chase Young.
Yeah, they went and got Chase Young. I mean, they're really good. I
think the Hawks did the necessary moves. Unlike, what we're lamenting about the Mariners, they made the moves. They had the draft capital. I mean, Devin Witherspoon has been a star right away.
Yeah, a star right away.
It just hasn't clicked for some reason lately.
It's because
the schedule's tough. I get it, but
you mentioned the goalpost thing. The goalpost has moved in the NFC. All the great teams in the NFL. I mean, people will argue with me about this, and they should. Niners, fantastic team. Eagles, fantastic team. Cowboys, fantastic team. The goalpost has moved forward. The Hawks are not just they're no longer wild card level. They may be sub wild card level. I mean, given what we've seen. I mean, Niko, I asked you a couple weeks ago, what was the best game that the Hawks have played this year? I mean, and I had to go back to the Browns game where they won on that that super late touchdown. And I was talking about this with more and more of my coworkers. I was talking about the last best all around game the Hawks have played.
Probably the Lions in September.
I was going to mention the Giants game.
That was a good game.
Yeah.
The defense really dominated.
The defense really dominated. The Giants were not. They're still not fantastic, and they were sub-fantastic even then. And that game was a long time ago. I mean, so
that's the tough part.
That was a tough part. But I mean, if you're going to look at the schedule, we saw a 3-point win against the Commanders, and a blowout loss to the Ravens, and a bunch of other losses in between. And I guess, Niko, the question. Well, you should answer the question.
You're gonna make me answer. No, I'm just kidding.
I know. I've been talking for 20 minutes.
I have faith that this team knows how to respond to adversity.
Right.
What troubles me a little bit is when you're seeing the press conferences and a little bit more of the tone has changed. It's gone from we're going to be fine, this is just football, to, Pete maybe singling out some folks on defense in an effort to challenge them, not throw them under the bus or anything like that. You got extracurricular stuff. You got like Jamal Adams getting into it with reporters and things like that. And like, I'm not saying he can't defend himself. He can do whatever he wants. Like, that's his human right. But I guess my point in telling that part of the story is that the focus seems, at least outside the team, to be shifting. It isn't on just the X's and O's. It's on Jamal and the reporter. It's on, the fight with, I don't want to call it a fight, but the skirmish with DK and Fred Warner and things like that.
I feel like we say that weekly about DK.
Honestly. And in that instance, I don't think it's his fault. I mean, I said that I thought Warner started it because he pushed DK in the back of that, and people were getting at me on social media like, well, DK suplex. I'm like, he tackled him. It was a little bit like, it was the only way he could go. Warner's a big guy. He thought Warner still had the ball. Like, it's football. Yeah, it would have been there wasn't even a penalty called on the tackle. Like,
right.
So it's like, okay. And then Warner didn't even get ejected was the point. Like and then he pushes DK in the back of the head. Anyways, I could go on about that because that kind of annoyed me. But I guess the point me answering this is my heart wants to say fair. They'll make the playoffs because I think they can win those last 3 games. I think they can win 3 of these last 4. I don't know which 3 they'll win.
I'm looking at the Cardinals,
but it's really difficult. It's like this is a stretch that even you can throw any of those teams out there. The Kansas City Chiefs, the Philadelphia Eagles, you can throw and the Niners, the Cowboys. You could throw any of those teams into this 4-game stretch right here. I mean, the Eagles are part of the stretch. So it's moot point with them, and 3-1 would be a reasonable record for them. Let alone a team like the Seahawks that has lost 4 in a row. the worst losing streak of the Carroll era. So I think they can do it. But if you're making me pick something, I have to responsibly say foul at this moment.
Right.
But I don't think the door is shut at this moment.
We talked about a couple, at the beginning of this football season, we were kind of looking at the schedule and we're like, okay, whoa. We were kind of saying when you got to, this point, and maybe a couple weeks ago, we're thinking, the Hawks may have to steal one, just really quick, somehow like a last second field goal. Something like that, maybe steal a game against the Niners, take one, or a game against the Eagles, against the Cowboys, and I just don't see it. I mean, what does Geno Smith's health looks like? I mean, K9.
Yeah.
I mean, what does that look like? The
Absolutely.
defense is just beginning to obliterate it. And these are great offensive teams, and even going back the Rams game, I mean, that was another one, and the Commanders game, the Hawks only won that by 3 points.
Game-winning field goal. Mary, let's do the KOMO 4 keys for this one, because I thought about this, and these are my genuine keys to this game. I just think that when you look at this matchup Sunday, one, that it's almost nearly must win. The first key, Najee, what's that say again? I forgot what I wrote.
Okay, the first one is try to contain Hurts.
Yeah, and that's any team that plays the Philadelphia Eagles, right? Like, he's a star in every sense of the word, running, passing, maybe a couple weeks where he wasn't at his absolute best, but for a Hawks defense that has been giving up ample amount of points on the heels of, in my opinion, being an elite defense in, say, October and early parts of November, they were really keeping this team in certain games. I mean, that Giants game specifically, it's a monument. I guess what I'm trying to say is containing it is a monumental task for a defense that's kind of reeling at the moment.
Yeah, contain Hurts. I mean, that can mean a lot of things, though. I mean, could he have, 300 yards passing? Yeah, contain him on the ground or on the air. I don't think they'll do both.
Yeah, like if you have like 150 passing yards and 50 rushing yards, I think they'd be like happy as heck with that.
I think they would be too. I think so. I have so much respect for Jalen Hurts, even when he was in college, because he's just a complete winner, just from the very beginning.
What's the next one?
The next key is, what is a blueprint for beating the Eagles?
Yeah, so my opinion is, okay, they've lost a couple games here, albeit to excellent teams and the Niners and Cowboys in the last couple weeks. Did they provide any kind of blueprint for how you beat this team that has looked nearly unstoppable? I mean, I think Hurts has only lost like 3 or 4 games as a starter in the regular season, maybe 3 total regular season.
And they were all in the last month.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's the idea. He's lost like 3 or 4 regular season games total. Half or more of them have been in the last 2 weeks. So is there some kind of blueprint for finally how to just defend this, anomaly of a talented quarterback? What do you think about that?
I think it's going to have to be keep whoever is starting quarterback. Hopefully it's Geno. Keep him clean. I think the Eagles have a really strong defensive end, especially on the interior, defensive line, especially on the interior. They're a very powerful team. I really think that if the Hawks are going to win this game, JSN. It has to be JSN.
Breakout,
yeah, I think so. He has to have a breakout game, and he's been being featured more and more in the offense as the season has gone on. Truthfully, I think it's going to have to go from over the top passes. I mean, we may have to. There have to be some trickeration. Maybe some.
We'll see what they cook up.
I think there'll have to be some cooking. Definitely some cooking to just catch people off guard. Here's the thing: when you get to this point of the season, you played a lot of games. There's a lot of tape available for you. On you, there's a lot of tape available on the Eagles too. Maybe people are watching that tape on the Eagles, and that's why they kind of had that bit of a slide. I think. The Hawks may have to get a bit fancy here, but I think the defense is going to have to step up tremendously, because when we look at AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, I mean, that's a receiving duo for the ages in Philadelphia, and I think they're going to light the Hawks up on Monday.
It could be tough.
Could be tough.
And I'm saying they got to stay level too. Like,
yeah.
This is a brutal stretch, but stay level, have confidence in yourself.
Don't freak out
through these injuries. And then they got to respond to Pete's challenge as well. We mentioned he's been calling out guys specifically. He mentioned Jamal. He mentioned some of the defenders in the secondary. They need to respond to that. And they need to say, this is really rare that Pete's going to single somebody out. We need to answer this call, and we need to show out against the Philadelphia Eagles.
I mean, Jamal Adams got burned a few times last week.
Yeah, it's been tough.
And it was super obvious. And this is another week where people could get burned.
I still think, he's a super talented guy. I'm not sure what's happening there.
I just don't know. I have the utmost confidence in Pete Carroll, because he is one of the best coaches, not just in pro football, but in all football, college or pro. he's gonna have to reach into his bag, and we'll see what's happening. I think injuries have a lot to play, a lot to do with that. We'll see what Gino looks like. We'll see, we'll see what we'll see what it looks like. But I do you want to do score predictions for this game?
We'll do score predictions. We were going to talk about the Kraken as well.
Yeah.
I think we can. How about this? Let's do our fair foul on the Kraken. I'm not going to do I said Kraken. Let me just do the brief so we can circle back to this in February and March. So Super Intermarian, why don't you bring up our Kraken fair foul? Will they make the playoffs? It's entirely too early to say that. I'm going to say that the early season struggles that we've seen is because their depth is what beat most teams last year. And the fourth line kind of got thrown in flux. Ryan D'Amato and Morgan Geekie no longer here. But I think they're starting to gel a little bit. And I think Riker Evans getting the call up is a little bit of a spark. I'm going to say yes. It's too early to go either way, but I'm going to say fair. They're going to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Okay, fair as well.
I could say I mean, as long as they bring the same spirit and fight they had in that Florida game.
Yeah.
I think, but the immediate stretch is just kind of a little bit rough for the Kraken. I think it was like this last year too, if you remember. So just kind of stay patient, guys. Chill out on the ice.
Hopefully we can reference this back. We told you they'd make it.
We told you they'd be here, obviously. Yeah.
Final score prediction. We'll just do this on. I'll say Eagles 38, Hawks 24.
Oof, it's gonna be a rough post-game show if that's the case. I'm gonna go Eagles 31, Hawks the inverse 13. They
fight hard on Monday nights, but yeah,
they do fight hard, and the record on Monday nights is solid.
It'd be really funny if we saw Action Green against Kelly Green. I don't know if that's gonna happen.
Is it Kelly Green? Is that what the
no?
Eagles
I don't
are?
think. I don't know.
I don't know what they're wearing, honestly. Maybe the Hawks should break out those throwback
jerseys. That'd be great. Those are the two best throwbacks we've seen in the league this year: the Eagles and Hawks.
Yeah. And that is a game you can watch on KOMO News on Monday night.
Thanks for reminding me that.
Yeah, you need to just sit through the game. Most importantly, watch Niko.
Well, thank you. Pre-game show, KOMO News at 4, which is the show that Najee produces here at KOMO. We're going to have some special pre-game stuff, last-second game previews. And then you watch the game, of course, starting at 5 right here on KOMO Monday Night Football. And then special post-game show, we'll have a live player. I hope he's live, but you know what I'm saying? He'll be live on the air with us.
There'll be a live player.
And yeah. And we'll bring you what Pete Carroll's saying in the press conference after, as well as the usual post-game recap and that sort of thing. So it's going to be a lot of fun, just like this podcast was, Najee.
It's always fun.
Yeah, thanks for doing it again with me.
I appreciate it. I kind of have to.
It kind of does have to. Najee, thank you. Shout out, respect to Super Intern Mary one more time. We're forever Super Intern Mary. I love that.
Yes. All one word.
Yeah, is it one or two words?
All super. Yeah, well, you can. If it's your name, you can just change it. It's fine.
And thank you for listening and watching the KOMO Sports End Zone podcast. What is a week from now? Yeah, we'll do one more before the holidays, probably right now. I'm out of town, but I think we can still do it.
Yeah, we'll do one.
All right, brothers. Thank you.
Adios.
And thank you to all for checking in with us again.
Bye-bye.